a display of their collection of items from the old Florence Deposit Bank. So that got our wheels to rolling. And of course, we all know, or most of you know, I believe that Joe Clinton's ancestors started Florence Deposit in 1904, but as they will tell you later, their ancestor had actually begun doing banking before there were charters and before there were a lot of laws. He had done banking from the 1800s, and I'll let them tell you about that. But when I was growing up, and many of you, the only bank in Florence was Florence Deposit. And of course, there's scores of banks in Boone County nowadays. So I want to emphasize that this program is not meant to promote any one individual bank over another. Our purpose, as stated in our mission, is to develop awareness and promote appreciation of the history of Boone County. And of course, as you might imagine, the people who started most of those banks are no longer local, or some of them have passed away. So it's hard to kind of go back and find folks who know firsthand information. Well, obviously, since we announced we were going to do this, a lot of folks have explained that they have had some links with banks. So we've created a date in November of 2014 where Mary Sue Rudisell is going to be bringing her documentation from the old bank down the Bellevue Bottoms, and she'll explain that. I've asked one of our guest speakers tonight, Dennis McAvoy, to explain how and why the 8 banks that existed in this county in the early 20th century increased to the number of banking institutions that are doing business here today. That change in itself is a significant element of the history of banking in Boone. But our focus, we hope, will stay pretty much on the original 8 chartered banks and their roots, and how the roots of those banks have developed or morphed into the banks we have today. So our presenters tonight are first Dennis McAvoy, who began working at Florence Deposit Bank when he was only 16 years old and still in high school. He continued working there while pursuing his bachelor's degree at Thomas More College. He attended Chase Law School, and then he graduated from LSU Banking School of the South in 1977. He changed his career after completing 25 years in banking. He became a certified agent for the Major League Baseball Players Association. Now that's quite a change. And he served in that capacity for more than 20 years. And he told me that the first player he represented was his own son, who was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. Now, I'm a neighbor of the McAvoys, and I did not know that until the other day when he told me that, and I'm thinking, wow, that's really amazing. So during that time, he also, I don't know how he had time to do all this, he was entered into a commercial real estate partnership. And add that to his service as a counselor at hospice and the extensive community service that I know personally that he did with the Rotary, or does still with the Rotary. And he and his wife Myra do indeed reside in Florence. They brought up their 4 children right in my neighborhood, and now they dote on the grandchildren, the 10th of which is expected soon. Our second presenter then is Steve Gillespie. He's currently with the Bank of Kentucky. He received his bachelor degree at NKU and earned his MBA as well. And then after working in insurance for several years, he began his banking career at American National over in Campbell County, and then moved to Boone State Bank. And here again, we get into this morphing business. Boone State was bought out by Fifth Third, if I have this correct. And then finally, he moved to the Bank of Boone, which became the Bank of Kentucky. He's worked in Boone County for 25 years, during which time he also has been active in community affairs, including our favorite, the Rotary Club, and also served a number of years on the Behringer Crawford Museum Board. He and his wife, Kathy, have 5 children. And then the third presenter we have tonight is Lee McNeely. Lee began working for the People's Deposit Bank in Burlington after having grown up in that community. He was in the first graduating class at Connor. Now, he explained to me that the first 2 years of his high school he was at Boone County, but then they split off Connor, so he graduated from there. Then he went on to graduate from Georgetown College with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. That kind of explains why he's a bird person. He likes to catch the birds and take photos of them. And it's amazing what he's done. And then he had a minor in business. He's currently with the Heritage Deposit Bank. He and his wife Linda have a son and 2 daughters. And as I said, his hobby is ornithology. And he serves on the Dinsmore Foundation board as well. And we're very, very grateful to each of them, as well as to Sue Kate and Joe Clinton for bringing their displays, and we'll hear more about that later. But I ask you to give them all a round of applause as they come up. I think Steve's occupying this table, and Lee and Mr. McAvoy, if you want to sit over there, or do you want to sit there? I'll leave it up to you. I'll ask Dennis to go first, and then if the others want to come up and do their presentations as their turn comes, that would be fine too. Yes?
Just a quick question. I thought Dennis Drake was going to be here.
You know, he was originally, but then he's been rescheduled to come with Mary Sue Rudisol at the November 2014 meeting. He's coming. I'm sorry?
I said, I'll see you then. I have to go back to work.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for doing the program.
Oh, you're very welcome. Grab one of our newsletters on the way out. It's on the table here, and that'll tell you more about the meetings for the next year. Okay, so Dennis, where are you?
Right here.
There it is, right here. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Appreciate, first of all, getting a chance to see everybody. First of all, I want to say thanks to Joe and Sue Kate. They're the ones, Joe should probably be up here talking because he's got more of a length of time as far as the history of the Florence Deposit Bank and can go in more detail than I could ever give. But all those artifacts and memorabilia, that's true. They put a lot of work into that, and I do appreciate it. We've got 10 minutes. Each presenter has 10 minutes, so it's kind of tough to cover 87 years in 10 minutes. So I thought instead of giving you a lot of facts that can put you to sleep, I'll give you a little feel of what it was like when I started at the bank. One thing Betsy mentioned, I do have a kind of a diverse background as far as my employment. I've been with the bank for 25 years and then being involved with representing baseball players for 20 years and commercial real estate for about the same period of time. And Betsy mentioned my son, and I'm still waiting to get paid. I have never been paid from him for representing. I don't know how that works, but he's one of the few guys that did not pay me. But first of all, I just want to give you a little background with regard to the Florence Deposit Bank. And I guess it would even be better to start off from the current situation, and then I'll look back, because Betsy just briefly touched on it. You know, and it's good to see Judge Ferguson here too. It's been a while since I've seen Bruce, and he can relate to a lot of the things that I'm saying and talking about. And also one of my former colleagues, Beth Crane. She and I started about the same time at the Florence Bank, so it's wonderful to see her again. But in the mid-'80s, things changed in banking in this particular area and throughout the country. But what happened prior to the mid-'80s, you would have charters in individual states for a bank. And at the time when I was very active with the bank, there were basically 9 chartered banks in Boone County. The only way you could get into a county is by applying for a charter, showing capital structure, being able to go to the banking commissioner and apply, and show a need in the community for a bank. That all changed in the mid-'80s. Multi-county branch banking came about. And multi-county branch banking allowed banks to put branches in a bank, in a county, if they were contiguous to that county. So in other words, Hamilton County, over in Cincinnati, where all the large Cincinnati banks, they wanted to get over in northern Kentucky. Kenton County was right next to them. They were able to get in Kenton County and then came out to Boone County. And once that happened, everything changed. We were just a budding area here in this community. Everybody knew the growth capacity as far as population, so everybody wanted to get in here. So things changed drastically in the mid-'80s. But going back to the beginning for the Florence Deposit Bank, it opened business July 25th, 1904, with a $15,000 base of capital. And at that time, that was a lot of money. And there was some question from what I've read whether or not there was really a need for it at that time as far as the population. And it quickly proved that there was a need in this area to have a bank of that sort. Mr. Rice was the first president, and he stayed in that capacity until 1919. One of his close associates was a Mr. Scott, and those two people were very, very influential in just getting the thing going and getting belief in the banking community that Florence Deposit could actually hold on to itself. This Mr. Scott, who was the vice president, evidently was a very loyal guy because he stayed with the bank until 1920, and he died at a director's meeting, a banker's director's meeting, so that's loyalty there. He's going all the way through. But some of the other directors at that time, Mr. Tanner, Ms. Myers, they were involved, but those two fellows were kind of the ones that started off. But then it really took off in 1919 with Clinton Blankenbecker taking over as president and chairman of the board. He and Mr. Renneker, they were considered the major sources of attracting attention and attracting confidence in the community at that time. And Eva Miller, George Tanner, those were some names. I'm just throwing out some people might remember some of those names that were also very influential. And at that time, that was the key to banking. People had to believe in the people that were operating that bank. They had to believe that they were trustworthy, that they were people that put their own money in there, that it was something that was stable. And nowadays, you know, with the size of banks, that's not, the individual aspect is long gone. But in those days, that was very, very important. Within the first 6 months of operation, a 6% dividend was paid with capital stock, and that proved justification right off the bat to a lot of investors that, hey, this thing is going to last. It was located on what is now Main Street in Florence. They called it Stringtown on the Pike, and it stayed there for a number of years. In 1926, they raised their capital to $35,000, and they paid a cash dividend that year, 160%. So that was kind of nice, you know. And they also, at that time, 9% semi-annual dividends were paid during that year of 1926, which was very, very good return on your investment. And when that took place, there were 50 stockholders in the Florence Deposit Bank in 1926 prior to the payout of the dividends. Right after the payment of those dividends, it increased to 190. So people said, hey, this is a good investment, it's going to stay, let's go with it. Their location on Main Street was the main road at the time in the 20s. Bruce could give you a more detailed breakdown as far as the history of that region and area as far as the transportation. But if I'm correct, that is the